Hello, how you doing? And welcome back to the channel. In this video, we need to talk about this man. Who saw this coming? Stuart Hogg has today announced that following the World Cup later this year, he is going to be retiring from professional rugby. I think this came out of left field, personally. He's 30 years old, but in today's modern game, you could have easily potentially seen him playing until he was in his mid-30s, but he is going to be calling it a day. So I'm going to be getting into that in this video, why Stuart Hogg is retiring, his kind of explanation, and also where does he rank as a Scotland great, first of all, and secondly, as a modern day great of any of the players we've seen over the last 10 or 15 years. I think that's quite an interesting discussion to have. But big call from Stuart Hogg, the former Scotland captain. So let's get into it. So you look at Stuart Hogg's career, and he is on 100 caps for Scotland. He's been on 3 British and Irish Lions tours, picked up 2 test caps on those 3 tours. That's something actually that I will kind of circle back to because I think that's quite interesting. But you look at the career he's had, an ever-present for Scotland. He's won stuff domestically, particularly with Exeter. And since he's been playing his rugby in England, he has been absolutely sensational. And this, as I mentioned in the intro, came out of left field for me. I did not expect Stuart Hogg to be retiring. He's 30 years old, but if we want to look at Johnny Sexton, if we want to look at a whole number of other players that potentially he could have gone a lot younger. But the most interesting line from the statement that many of you may well have seen, he put it out on social media, said, "I don't feel my body can achieve the standards that I set myself for much longer, and I've always wanted to finish at the top end of the game." So that kind of explains it, doesn't it? Fairly straightforward. Obviously, we know the tolls that rugby players put themselves through. And then if he's able to control when he retires, the manner in which he retires, he doesn't want to slink off into the background and maybe pick up a few big paychecks. He wants to finish at the very top, and there's no better way of doing that than at a World Cup with Scotland. I just hope now, from a Scotland perspective, that they're able to perform to their absolute best as well, because you look at the group they're in with Ireland and South Africa, that is going to be such a tough challenge for that group of players and Gregor Townsend and that team to get themselves out of the group. So let's wait and see how Stuart Hogg's career finishes. But his explanation is pretty straightforward. So as I said, 3 Lions tours, 100 Scotland caps, 30 years of age. Could see him going a lot longer, but that will be the final time that he steps foot onto the field. I mean, fair play to him, because how easy would it have been for Stuart Hogg, even if he felt that he was getting to a point in his career where he couldn't maintain the standards we've previously seen from him? He could have headed to France, I'm sure. He could have headed to Japan. He could have probably played in Japan for a few years and picked up some pretty big paychecks over there. But he's saying enough is enough. He's moving on. And kind of some of my original thoughts when I was thinking about this video and thinking about Stuart Hogg, for me, almost what stands him out the most is that he has been excellent pretty much since he made the leap from kind of under 18s into senior rugby. He was part of, I think, what was the Pro 12, whatever it was back in those days, when he kind of made his, not necessarily his debut season, but his first kind of season playing regularly in men's senior competition. He was in the dream team for the Pro 12 at that time. He came into the Scotland squad very young and immediately just looked at home. You know, there's those certain players that they play international rugby and it just looks natural to them. Whereas there are plenty of players, and we've seen this with England a lot recently actually, who can be brilliant playing for their clubs. They step into an international jersey and they're just not able to replicate that. Whereas Stuart Hogg was so good at such a young age that the moment he stepped into a Scotland jersey, he looked at home on the international stage. And also that's playing in a Scotland side that at that time weren't necessarily always at their best. It's why he got selected on the Lions tour back in 2013. That was his first Lions tour. He was the youngest player on that tour. And then he subsequently got picked for New Zealand in 2017. Actually picked up an injury, you might remember, in one of the warm-up games when Conor Murray, Conor Murray's elbow, I think, caught Hogg, basically ruled him out for the Test series, which I think was a massive blow to him because many people at that point, 2017, would have had Stuart Hogg as the starting fullback. And then he also went on the tour, the most recent one, to South Africa during COVID. So 3 Lions tours really sums it up. I mean, I was looking at the other players that have played 3 Lions tours. Correct me on any that I'm wrong here. The only ones that I could think of, and I checked all of these, was Owen Farrell, Mako Vunipola, Alan Wynne-Jones, who's actually played 4 tours, and Conor Murray. During that time, during the time that Hogg's been playing, I know there'll be other players that have been on many tours, because Sexton didn't get picked on the last one, so he's on 2 tours. So there's not many players. You're in a bracket of players. To be selected on 3 Lions tours is just absolutely sensational. But to go back to what I was saying of how at home Stuart Hogg looked early on. I mean, he picked up 2 Six Nations Players of the Tournament awards during his career. But I think the Scotland we see now is in part because of Stuart Hogg. And I know loads of other stuff gets into it, but you talk about this kind of golden Scottish generation. I felt like Stuart Hogg was almost the first one of them, really. And then since then, we've had Finn Russell come through and Hamish Watson, Jamie Ritchie, loads of other guys that are currently playing at the moment. But I feel like it's no coincidence that they have had a generational talent player in Stuart Hogg, and the team overall has been a lot better during that period. He's been absolutely brilliant for Scotland. So Scotland fans, let me know in the comments, where does Hogg rank in terms of great Scottish players? Don't know if he can necessarily be at the top of that list, particularly when you think of some of the great players that have done it. And also, I guess, particularly with the fact that he hasn't been in a Scotland team that has done anything, that sounds harsh, that has won anything. They've never won a Six Nations. But I think in terms of probably the last 2 decades at least, almost my lifetime, so the last 30 years, I can't think of a Scottish player who's been better, really. Over a long period of time, I think it is probably Stuart Hogg, but you can correct me or put your thoughts in the comments down below. And also, where does he rank in terms of this whole generation? I mentioned the other players there that have been on 3 Lions tours. Certainly in the case of Owen Farrell and Alan Wynne-Jones, I think they will be remembered as generational players. Conor Murray possibly as well for Ireland, Mako Vunipola possibly for England as well. But I think Stuart Hogg will be remembered in terms of the modern crop of professional players, with Johnny Sextons, with Owen Farrells, with, you know, all those guys who have been at the very, very top for a consistent period of time and been absolutely excellent. Then I think Hogg's up there. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. The final part that I kind of wanted to mention for this video in terms of Stuart Hogg was just what's going to stand out. What stands out to you when you think of Stuart Hogg? What is it you think of? I think for a lot of people, it's going to be his turn of pace and his sidestep. And my favourite try that I've seen him score was that one in 2013. It's probably the most well-known one against Italy at Murrayfield in the Six Nations. And Scotland were leading the game, but Italy looked like they were just one pass away from scoring a try of their own and eating into that deficit. Hogg at fullback, read the pass, intercepted it, stepped away from the defence and accelerated to score up the other end. It kind of almost summed him up a little bit as well. So what other memories am I forgetting? Where does he rank in terms of the Scottish greats? Where does he rank in terms of the current modern greats? Stuart Hogg to retire after the World Cup. Big news today. Understandable news. Good on him. Unbelievable career. But let me know about what you think in the comments down below, really. And I hope that at the World Cup, as I've said already, that he's able to bow out with Scotland playing really well. But they're in a pretty tough group. The one final thing I will mention, actually, because I did mention it earlier in the video, I just wondered whether he would hold on for another Lions tour. Because I mentioned he's been on 3 Lions tours, but he's only picked up 2 caps in 2 of the test matches, which was the most recent one. He started the win over South Africa, and then he also started the second test when they lost. And I know it was a real bugbear of his after 2013 and 2017 that he hadn't had a Lions test. He has got 2 now. I wonder whether he would have been tempted to go at a 4th tour, try and get on a 4th tour and pick up a few more caps for the Lions. Having said that, at the moment, you look at some of the fullbacks out there in the Northern Hemisphere, particularly Hugo Keenan, Freddie Stewart. Maybe it wouldn't be too easy for Stuart Hogg in another couple of years to necessarily get that starting 15 jersey. I don't know. We'll never know, I suppose. But Stuart Hogg, phenomenal. He'll retire after the World Cup. Enjoy him whilst he is here. He has been utterly sensational. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment down below. And as always, guys, I'll see you in the next one.